Thanks so much for joining me on the Slice of Finance podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Jared.
Super excited to chat with you here today. Would love to kind of kick things off. Tell me really first what inspired you to start Runway in the first place, and how are you changing the way startups and small businesses think about their financial health?
Yeah. We actually targeted mid-market. We actually don't target startups. But way we got started is I was running a company called Sandbox VR. I was appointed CEO about 6 months before COVID hit. And it's this retail company where you go out of your home and buy tickets. And when COVID did hit, we had to figure out what we're going to do to keep the company going. What happens to COVID is last 3 months, 6 months, 2 years. I think Elon said it was going to be over by June back in 2020. Long story short, we had to create a bunch of different scenarios on spreadsheets, and we laid off 95% of the company. We hibernated the company. I laid myself off, entire executive team, when we're 400 employees to 10. On the tail end of that, I had a conversation with our now ex-CFO, and I said, Figma exists now, Notion exists now. There's great software for all these other things. Surely there was something better we could use than emailing these spreadsheet models back and forth. And we ended up with 20 different versions of it. And I was told, no, this is kind of like just how things are done. So I asked the Andreessen team, who funded Sandbox, who also led our seed investment in Runway, what if someone built a Figma for finance? And that's how we got started. And so what Runway is it is a business planning platform designed for mid-market companies. So some of our customers include anywhere from as small as an angel, from small as a superhuman, all the way up to an AngelList, where they can use to run their businesses. So if you're familiar with Adaptive or Anaplan or something like that, we're in a similar category. The big difference is that when you adopt one of those products, and every finance person I've talked to knows this, your main finance model still lives outside of that thing. Your revenue forecast actually lives in a spreadsheet still. And there's a very good reason for that, and we want to change that.
When I talk with founders, there's always, like you mentioned your story that kind of led into starting this company, but there's always that final domino that fell that made you want to do it. So obviously there was numerous factors, but what if you had to pick one thing, what was the final domino that got the company started at that point?
I mean, that's when the company got started. That was the final domino, what I just
Okay.
described, COVID event. But I will tell you, what came before. And what came
Yeah.
before is, I've been a 4-time CEO, 3-time founder, and my background is in math and engineering. I think many founders are. And for a long time, I just felt a really deep sense of insecurity around understanding finance. At the first company, I had a fractional CFO, and I would get this model and forecast, and I couldn't really understand it. And I was fairly certain that they didn't understand how the business worked. We're a game studio, multiple games, and creating a growth model and modeling virtual goods is fairly complex, and barely had a conversation about how the company really works. And so that insecurity was a long time coming. My second company was bought by Postmates. I was VP of product growth there, and I remember being in a meeting one time, and someone said contribution margin, and I was like, "Hey, what's that?" And the answer is, that's literally one of the metrics our team is responsible for. I said, great, super. One of the realizations over the course of both operating and having to deal with finance is that finance is not just about accounting or accounting in the future in the form of budgeting. It really is everything that happens in the business, from marketing to sales to hiring to engineering to product. All of those things contribute. And the tools we have and the way companies are organized and how we think about finance, interact with it, do not reflect that reality. And we think the potential is enormous if we can make that happen in companies.
Now, you mentioned this interest even before starting the company, and then obviously this is your life now every single day. What you don't have to say what the companies you work in, just kind of make it more general.
Sure.
Where do you see kind of some of the biggest financial mistakes or misunderstandings come from?
Most mistakes come from a lack of understanding of the business at a very foundational level. And this is what I mean by the mode of finance is sort of like accounting, but in the future. What I mean by that is you have accountants, and you have income statements, you have actuals, and that's well and nice and understood. And a lot of what finance seems to be about is about budgeting, making sure that everyone is on budget. We have a clear budget. We know where we're going to spend. We know what the revenue forecast and expectations are. But the mistake is we don't understand the relationships and the causal drivers behind how spending more money on an engineer, how this particular feature, how creating a new marketing channel, a new SKU is actually going to drive those key metrics on the high level. And without that understanding, that's when bad things happen, right? You have a forecast and you think you're going to get to X million dollars in revenue over the next 12 months. And so, but if you don't understand the impact of, well, what is your cash flow conversion cycle? Like, and how do you pay your salespeople? And if the timing is off, you might run out of money sooner. And you can only understand that if you have the causal relationships and drivers and a simulation of business well understood. And if you don't have that, you're just doing counting your future, that's when everything bad happens. So that is basically the category of mistakes that is almost in every failure case that we see.
Can you share, as you've been building this company, has there been any key like pivotal decisions that come to mind that significantly shape the direction of where the company is at today?
Yeah, there's a big one, and it actually ties directly to what we were just talking about. So when I first started a company, we worked on a very complicated, well, actually it was very accessible and it was very nice looking, but it was a pivot table into your actuals. So the pain that I had as a founder, and most founders have, is you have QuickBooks and you have these reports in the form of income statements. And what you really want to do is to pivot it, categorize it, and like drill in and see from month to month where you're spending money, what are things that increased or things that decreased. And as sort of a static spreadsheet, certainly QuickBooks is not the best interface to that. We thought we could build a better interface. So it's this multi-dimensional pivot table. You can like say, okay, I don't want to see it by chart of accounts. I actually want to see it by department, and I build a department, and I want to see the different categories, and then I want to see the different vendors, and I want to see by date, and I can compare that month over month. And it did a good job of that. And what we quickly found, though, is that that's a problem founders and companies only think they have. The reason why that is the case is, the type of companies that care most about that tend to be smaller, because the larger companies, they care about what's going to happen in the future. They have to make decisions that have, measured into tens of millions of dollars in terms of trade-offs. And when you're a small company, you're probably pre-product market fit, you're probably early, and the reality is most of your costs are in people. And next month, most of your costs are in people. And it doesn't really change all that much. And so the decision that we have to make is, well, building a forecasting scenario modeling engine that is accessible in the way that we want is really, really difficult. It's much easier just to build something that gives you nice reports. So about a year in, we started over and reset that product, and that's what Runway is today.
And like, when you talk about the people that you're working with, who is what is that ideal role within those companies? And can you share any like feedback on like impact today and what they're saying?
Yeah. So we have a bunch of case studies on our website. The number one adjective we hear is fun. And that is an important adjective to us because the default way people think about fun, my background is gaming, is my first B2B finance company of any kind. So it's not quite an accident. But the default way people think about fun is that that's like super superfluous. It's a luxury. But because of our deep belief about finance is about creativity and insight and making better decisions. You need to be in flow in order to make decisions. You can't make really good decisions if you're frustrated, if the system is unresponsive, if you can't think at the speed of thought, which is why Excel is so widely used and so widely loved, because it's fast. And when things are fun, you can be creative, you can be smarter. And so that's the first adjective that we hear the most. In terms of the users, typically is a finance model owner, whoever that is in the company. At a smaller company, it'll be a CFO, VP of finance, it could be a head of strategic finance. Whoever is the holder of the finance model is a first user and first adopter. And once they start using it, what happens is the other model owners in a company begin to use it. Because for a few reasons. One is, so for example, we have a lot of our customers have their growth teams implemented on Runway. Previously, you might buy a product like Singular or something where you can integrate all of your ad spend data and report on it and pivot against it. You can now, because we connect to not just finance things, but everything, because that is like our belief. The growth team now has all the reporting there, and they can model and forecast the growth of the user acquisition directly in Runway. And now finance can take that actual output and connect directly to the finance model. And so growth teams, sales teams, product teams, biz ops teams eventually get on the platform, but it usually starts with a finance person.
And when you're talking with these companies, like, what are some of the key metrics that they care the most about at their stage that are really helping them determine their financial? I know there's the standard one, but like, are there any ones that you've maybe seen over time through talking with them that they really seem to care about at the stage of the company that they're at?
Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting. Like the things that people care about progresses as they get deeper into the model and usage of Runway. So I mean, it starts with like what you would expect: revenue, runway, cash and bank burn. How do we manage like, the timeline of our spend? But as they get deeper, most companies they have to increase their leverage over time, especially in the age of AI. And so what they start caring more about are leverage drivers. So how many new customers can AE support? How many new customers can a sales success person onboard? And these leverage metrics become so much more important. And because it's something you can optimize against, it's something that you can say, well, if we work on this set of features, this should increase the leverage of a salesperson onboard them because it's faster and easier to use. And that helps you make much better decisions in terms of product decisions, not just financial decisions, engineering decisions. So efficiency metrics become a lot more important over time.
How important was, like, when people look at what you've built, they see a really clean, like, interface. So let's talk, like, you mentioned this a little bit a while back about QuickBooks, right? Like, QuickBooks, like, a lot of people had some frustration with, like, maybe how it was laid out. It was not necessarily the most user friendly or, like, even nice to look at platform for depending on who you ask. How important was that when building Runway? Because you do have a great interface. It's clean. Like, how important was that in building that, in your approach to making this platform?
So the first thing I'll say is like I think it's a double-edged sword in that because it looks clean, people don't expect it to do as much as it does. It looks like a toy. So when I show it to sophisticated finance people, they're surprised by, oh, it is actually fully multidimensional. It integrates with a bunch of different things. So that is somewhat of a problem for us actually. But it is important. The reason why it's important is not just because we like nice things that feel good, although we do that. I think QuickBooks is actually really good. And it's empirically really good because you talk to accountants and people in finance, they like it. They don't want to switch. I mean, QuickBooks famously tried many times to make it nicer and faster and smoother in some way, and there was a revolt because accountants are used to using QuickBooks in the way they're using it, and it works for them. There's nothing wrong with that product. It does what it's supposed to do. I think the reason why design is pretty important for our use case is that we do a different thing than QuickBooks and also what we believe are incumbent products in the market. Because the problem we have to solve, we believe the opportunity in this space is to build a better tool for thinking, not a tool for reporting, not a tool just for like finishing a budgeting cycle, a tool where someone in the company, whether that's finance, who needs to manage a revenue forecast, play through a scenario, or head a product, they need to like think through an idea really quickly. And for that purpose, it has to be clean and clear and fast and intuitive, because otherwise that is how you end up with the reality of 40 different spreadsheets spread across every department. If you assume that your model is fixed, as most other platforms do, and that makes sense because the main value is you're going to get your data into one place and your managed budgeting cycles, that's fine. But we believe that the opportunity solved a different problem in the same way Figma solved a different problem than Envision in the design space.
When you look at, there's so much to be proud of in what you've built so far, right? And what you'll continue to build. But, this is your baby. If you had to pick a specific feature that you're most proud of, or milestone at the company, what would that be?
I mean, the specific feature is probably the existence of plans at all. We think a lot about offloading as a term in Runway. And the concept behind offloading is, we have a lot of these thoughts in our heads and we associate how smart people are with how quickly they can think and manipulate these thoughts in their heads. Like, so Magnus Carlsen in chess, they can think 30 steps ahead of time in their head. And that means like they're really smart. But if you think about the most productive work, the most creative kinds of work, it involves other people. And the way we work with other people is by thinking outside of our heads using tools. That's what a whiteboard is. That's what paper is. That's what writing is. That's what a spreadsheet is. And these tools allow us to hold more context that we can't always hold in our head, the complexity of the business, and allows us to manipulate them faster than we can do in our heads, like a spreadsheet doing all these calculations. And we think that these tools that we have to think about the business can be better. For example, when we think about as a finance person or a salesperson, product person operating the business, we do not think in our heads, it's not a wall of numbers. In our heads are projects and plans and features and roadmaps. And we found it really important to figure out a way for us to connect that with your numbers and models so that you can actually understand the impact all these things that are in your head, which is why linear and JIRA are things that people integrate with Runway. So now you can understand the financial impact directly. So that's probably the number one thing we're proud of.
As we wrap up here, the kind of last question for you, can you tell us in terms of what's next with Runway as we head into 2025?
The most important thing for us is for people to have even heard about us. So the reality is that a finance professional, when they're thinking about a finance platform, they're thinking adaptive, Anaplan, Gradient Pigment. We are not in conversation, and that is something we need to change. And there's a lot of work to do, both on the product side, but also how we engage with the customers who would find Runway valuable. So you can expect to hear a lot more from us over the next year.
Well, we're super excited to stay on track, on top of what you guys continue to do, and look forward to future conversations. And hopefully, we run into each other at one of these conferences in 2025. But
Sure we will.
thank you so much for joining us here today, and best of luck on everything. Super pumped for you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was wonderful.